Hello and welcome to the Retire Once Show, the show designed to help you get to retirement, but most importantly, stay retired. I'm your host, Johnathan Rankin, and I am joined as always by my lovely co-host.
Hi, I'm Melissa Rankin. Thank you for joining us.
And we are very happy to be here. We've got a great show for you today. But before we jump into that, I want to just talk about where we're at in the market. I don't want to go too much into the market, but we recognize that right now is a very stressful time. We are officially in bear market territory. Talks of recession are everywhere, and it is hard to think about what's going on in the markets and maintain a long-term approach on things. But that's why we always try to focus more on retirement planning topics, because that's all we can control. I mean, we can't control, as advisors, we can't control what happens in the markets. As investors, can't control what happens.
Can't control it.
No, we can. But what we can control is what we can do to prepare for retirement, what we can do to, make our financial plan a little bit more secure, or at least, giving us a better sense of comfort that we've got everything planned for. And so today we're going to talk about retirement planning for couples.
Yikes.
And so, money and marriage is always a interesting topic. It's usually the number one thing that, married couples argue about. So,
or in our case, the air conditioner, but that's okay.
I swear to you, 70 degrees or 69 degrees or anything in the 60s set for your air conditioner
68
is not, should not be. I should not have to wear a coat or a sweater or sweatpants in the middle of summer. It shouldn't happen.
It shouldn't, but in our house it does.
But once again, it shouldn't.
Meh, potato.
So yes, that is our main gripe daily, mind you, because for some reason, even in the winter, our air conditioner still somehow runs. And
we live in Texas, mind you. The air fluctuates.
Yes, well, it shouldn't fluctuate below a 70, but that's just my opinion. So
My take is 68, but again, other people have more complex issues, if you will.
Her take is wrong, and I guess at some point maybe we'll look on YouTube or for a podcast on couples and their air conditioning arguments. But today we're going to talk about retirement planning for couples. Before we do that, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you're notified every time we put out a new episode. And head to retireonceshow.com. You can ask a question there for the show. Today, we're going to be talking about some overarching themes to help retirement planning become a little bit easier when doing it as a couple. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to dig into some specific tactics that you can implement. We've gotten a number of questions around these topics, so we're going to make those episodes a little bit more tactical with specific things you can do. But today, we want to talk about some overarching themes that
more of an overview, if you will.
It is, yeah. So where do you want to start?
So with that in mind, I think where we should start is the number one thing, and this is true for retirement, money, air conditioner, you name it. In marriage, especially in marriage or in any relationship, if money comes into play, the number one thing that's so important, communication.
Yeah. So we've broken down communication into a few different areas where it's important to really communicate when it comes to retirement planning. The air conditioner side, we're going to talk about retirement planning. So the first thing that I think is important to talk about is retirement goals.
Absolutely.
Now, these are, it might sound very simple to think of, well, yeah, we both want to retire at some point, but what does that actually look like?
For each of you individually and you as a couple.
Because I look at this as if we were to plan a dream vacation. So if Melissa and I decided, okay, on your Apple, my Mac, because I'm a PC, she's a Mac, get the old reference there. If we were just to sit down and plan our dream vacation, I would guess that the odds are going to be different.
Yeah, I'm definitely going somewhere cold.
So, I would want to go somewhere cold, like Switzerland or somewhere like that. I think that would be
and
a lot
have
of
the
fun.
heater on the whole time.
Exactly.
In your parka.
So trying to plan a dream vacation is not going to be identical. Neither is retirement. Retirement, it's okay if it's different. It's okay if it's at different ages, but by asking simple questions like, when do we want to retire? That's, usually a lot of couples will get to that point. But then what does retirement actually look like? What do we want to do? What do we want to do in the early years? What do we want to do come to those middle years, and then what do we don't want to do in our later years? What's important for us to do? Is there something that you want to do specifically? If my guess is by the time we're retired, Melissa's going to spend all her time with our grandkids. Hopefully we have them.
Absolutely. If not, hey kids, mom's coming to visit.
And whereas I have no clue what I want to do, but maybe that might be what I want to do, but maybe I might want to plan those dream vacations.
Even our retirement looks a little bit different.
Yeah. So, trying to figure out what you want to do, because that actually is going to be where money comes into play, because everything that you want to do will require some financial means to help provide for that. So if that's going to be, you want to go spend time with the grandkids and I want to travel, well, obviously we want to do it together.
Oh, I was like, well, sounds like we're planning our retirement separately here. Now we're getting a little off course.
Well, but each of those have their own financial goal. So that's got to be incorporated when you're starting to go in that retirement planning conversation. And that's where we see a lot of couples miss that step, where they talk about, well, we know what it takes to maintain our house. We know what it takes to live and eat and manage things. But when you start adding in 5 extra Saturdays and no obligation of going to work, and you want to fill those with fun things to do, sometimes things cost money, and you want to make sure that each of those are added to that retirement plan. So having that conversation about retirement goals is very important.
Absolutely. You want to have a good idea of where you both stand.
Yeah. I think the next big important aspect to make sure you're talking about is difference in financial knowledge and experience.
Absolutely. Because
it is very normal. We run across it a lot with clients where there might be one person in the house who's the primary decision maker when it comes to money. And that's okay. It's completely normal, but that doesn't mean that the other spouse should be kept in the dark. I mean, for example, I should be able to have a login to our actual thermostat. I think that's appropriate.
And I don't see why.
And I shouldn't be kept in the dark on what our temperature is in our house.
Kept in the cool.
And the same thing happens with financial knowledge and experiences, that nobody knows the exact same stuff as someone else. And by making sure you're talking about, okay, I know that if I'm the primary decision maker, or if you are, well, we want to make sure that we're at least keeping each other in the loop on what the plan is. And I think that part of that is education, starting small. I know we've ran across a lot with clients where one spouse for decades has never been a part of the financial conversation. But the question
at all.
Yeah.
And then, if God forbid something happened, then you're kind of starting from scratch.
You are. And the last thing you want to do is try to pick up, all this complex planning, later in life when you've never dealt with it before. So starting small, and we always ask the question, well, if you're not the primary decision maker, we always ask both the primary decision maker and the other spouse, what happens if the primary decision maker is gone? The last thing you want to do is make it complicated. So starting with education and starting small, I look at it as, if you're going to start trying to fly a plane, you're not going to learn how to fly that plane day one, but you want to know day one, okay, where's the parachute? Where's the parachute if this thing goes wrong?
You want to know where to start, just in case.
And so that's the same thing about financial education. Start small. And this is always a good opportunity to work with a financial advisor. We do this a lot with clients. And I think it's important to have, do it in small digestible bites. That's what we've done a lot with clients, is that over the course of weeks or months, we set up kind of a routine around, okay, let's go through these few concepts this time. A couple weeks from now, let's touch on another part of it.
It can be very simple too. It can be as simple as maybe the spouse who doesn't make the decisions, as here's the logins, here's what these bills are, here's just in case type stuff. It can be very, very basic starting points.
Yeah, here's how to read your investment statement. Very simple things. And a lot of the times, the decision maker doesn't have to be a part of those calls. It's just about educating in case something ever happened to the primary decision maker. So that's something that we offer. If that's something that you want to do at home on your own, that's perfectly fine. It's just important to make sure that type of communication is happening, because it's going to make retirement planning for both people in that relationship a lot more comfortable. Because if you're just kept in the dark and you go, okay, I guess we can retire. I hope we can retire at some point. And then when we have markets like what we're going through right now, if you hear about the words recession and bear markets, the last thing you want to do is, think, okay, are we okay? You want to know where you're at, even if you're not the primary decision maker.
Which kind of leads into our next point. If you say you kind of get on the same page and you have some basic knowledge and it's same level, the next main thing is investment philosophy differences.
Yep.
This is another big thing that we run into all the time.
Absolutely, because sometimes if you don't agree on what temperature it is in the house, you might not agree on how much risk you should take in the market. And so there's a lot of times where we have one member of the house who is more aggressive and the other who's more conservative. And it can be frustrating when we go through up markets and maybe the aggressive investors thinking we're not making enough, or the opposite. We're going through down markets now and the conservative investors, getting panicked and frustrated because we're losing more than I thought we should.
It's kind of like a very general spending versus saving. I mean, in most relationships, you have a spender and a saver.
Yeah. So let's say that I am the conservative person and she's the aggressive investor here, I think that's where you want to first start off with the building out that retirement plan, because building out a retirement plan is going to give you a target allocation that you should be looking at, the appropriate amount of risk to achieve your long-term financial goals.
It'll help you both get on the same page.
Yeah. And it'll make sure that, okay, if you have a plan in place and both spouses know that, okay, all of our goals are going to be achieved if we're investing this way for the most part, over the long period of time, if we're investing this way and we stay disciplined, it might be more, I would say aggressive than maybe I want to do and maybe more conservative than what Melissa wants. But what do they say? Compromise is best when both parties are a little unhappy.
Nobody wins.
So, the goal is to really understand where each other are coming from. Why might you be more aggressive? Why might I be more conservative? And then from there, making sure that at least you're at a place where that your goals are going to be taken care of. That is when we're talking about retirement planning, especially for couples, that's what's most important, is focusing on those retirement goals and not just the investment strategy. Because if, let's say, for example, that you run through your plan, your goals are going to be achieved if you invest a certain way, and then you've got excess money or savings that maybe you want to set the aggressive investor, in this case Melissa, up with a trading account so she can do anything she wants in that account, invest as aggressively as she wants. But if she blows herself up and it goes to zero, at least me as a conservative investor, I know that it doesn't matter what she does, our goals are intact. And one of the things that we do with couples that have this big disagreement in investment philosophy is running a retirement scenario where we do set up that separate trading account. And for the conservative investor, I usually show what it looks like if that account goes to zero. And having that confidence knowing...
This is a very real exercise.
Having that confidence knowing that if her account goes to zero because she just decided to invest it as aggressively as she wanted, it's not going to impact our long-term goals. That's what's important, especially when having a very big difference in investment philosophy. So I would say communicating those three things: retirement goals, getting on the same page of financial knowledge, or at least working towards getting to the same place, and then coming to an agreement and an understanding of investment philosophy. Those three factors to communicate are extremely important.
So that leads us to our next main theme, perspective. And this sounds like almost like a contradiction to communication, because perspective is usually something that's inward. But in this case, it's not. And it's about perspective of the relationship overall. My money versus our money.
Oh, you see this. This is very common, especially with, I would say, newer couples. But we've ran across it in retiree, clients, where some people, because of salary differences, most people don't make the exact same salary in a relationship. So, having that my money versus our money conversation still happens with clients in their 60s.
You'd be surprised.
You might have one spouse who's stayed at home for years, taking care of the family and the house, and they weren't able to contribute to a retirement plan and weren't able to do the savings that the other spouse did. And so there's this, I don't want to call it a disagreement, but there's just this perspective of, okay, well, it's not our money, it's my money because I saved it. Well, that's not the way to look at it. Or you got to remember, you are retiring as a team, and you've got to look at it as a team retirement because you're having communication about it. You're both eventually going to stop working, even if only one spouse works. You're going to be living off of your savings alone. So it is a joint, decision. And that my money versus our money, it just creates a lot of tension.
Plus, I mean, why would you ever want to go through, I don't know, thinking my money versus our money if, let's say you do have a lot more money than your spouse or something to retire on. So then we're back to you're going on vacations alone. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, they always say that if you think that it's my money versus our money long enough, it can easily become our money with a divorce. So the last thing that you want to do is think that
it can very quickly go back to being just your money.
Yeah. So we always like to say having that perspective to know that this is a joint effort of getting to retirement. That can be applicable for, people who just got married, but really, especially for those that are thinking about retiring soon, looking at it as our money, because ultimately, nobody knows what member of the household is going to pass away first, because very rarely is it going to be a notebook type situation, to reference a very
I was like, what?
cheesy rom-com there, where they both pass away at the same time. Come on,
right.
I mean, you don't remember that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's, I guess that works. Yeah.
So having that conversation, or really that perspective of our money it's our money, not just my money, regardless of who contributed the investments.
Absolutely.
And so that brings us to the next thing to have perspective about. It kind of ties in with that.
I mean, ties in really well. It's considering your joint life expectancy.
Yeah, especially if there's a large age difference. I mean, like for example, Melissa, she just turned 21. So it is, we have a very large age difference.
See, this is why our marriage works.
I mean, I recognize that every year I get older, every year she stays the same age. And so, especially if there is a large age difference, you have to think of that joint life expectancy, because this is going to impact decisions that are made in regards to things like your pension. If you have one, you might consider taking a lump sum or a single life payment, or a joint and survivor payment. But it's easy to get lumped into, or easy to get wrapped into, let's say, a large lump sum payment or a higher monthly payment if you're taking a single life. But when you factor that joint life expectancy,
it might not make sense.
No, you might go, well, wait a minute. We need to make sure that my spouse is taken care of. I mean, if she's decades younger than I am, then she needs to be taken care of for a long period of time. So
not just with pensions, but also with other things like Social Security benefits. I mean, that's a huge factor.
It is. And it's not just about having a large age gap, but now you got to factor in, what if there's a large, earnings difference? If one spouse is a higher earner and the other one, is a lower earner, you want to start factoring in the higher earner's benefit. And that's all going into play of when should you actually collect Social Security. And so because of spousal benefits and survivor benefits, it's really important to look at that as a joint decision, as opposed to saying, well, I paid into Social Security for decades, I want my benefit now, and I don't care how much it's going to impact you, positive or negative. It's gotta
also, if you feel like that at any point, maybe marriage isn't for you.
Yeah, maybe it's going to go back to our money because of that quadro that's going to be put on. So those are the two themes that it's important as you're going through this retirement planning as a couple to think about: communication and having the right perspective on your overall financial picture, in working together as one unit, not just a individual unit. And I wish this was applicable for our air conditioner temperature as well. I wish it was an our decision versus a me decision, but unfortunately for some reason it's not. So that is unfortunate for me.
That is. However, we see eye to eye on most other things, especially when it comes to money and communicating in the first place. I mean, we think that that's very important, obviously.
It is very important. And if you are going through this as a couple and you feel like you need help and you don't know where to start, we'd be happy to go through a retirement assessment for you and your spouse and walk both of you through this whole process. If you have questions about, hey, one member of the house is not as knowledgeable in retirement planning or financial knowledge in general, we'd be happy to help with, setting up that education process to
absolutely,
slowly introduce these concepts of investments or, financial knowledge just overall. We'd be happy to set that up. So head to retireonceshow.com. You can send a question in if you've got one for the show, but you can also schedule that free retirement assessment that we'd be happy to go through with you. Before we get out of here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We want to see you back here next week. Especially we've got Father's Day coming up. So happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. And if you have any questions, once again, retireonceshow.com. But with that, I'm Johnathan Rankin.
I'm Melissa Rankin. Thank you for joining us.